Hi, I'm Lo. I'm an astrologer and intuitive tarot reader, and welcome to my channel, The Subtle Sag, where I offer horoscopes, tarot readings, and astrology-based meditations and affirmations. This is an overview of the astrology for the week of June 16th. I'm going to give a general outlook of these energies. Then, after the general overview, I will break down where in life these planetary energies will likely play out for each rising sign. I recommend listening to the overview and not skipping ahead to your sign because I will be discussing details in it that give you a background into the energies that are influencing the week. This week has a dreamy, ethereal quality to it with hard Neptune aspects coming in, so just know that some things will not be as they seem. I'm really going to focus in on these aspects and then end with the full moon in Capricorn happening on Friday. Be mindful, these transits will hit at different times depending on where you are in the world. But throughout this, I'm referring to the days of the week that correspond to the Eastern Standard Time Zone that I'm currently in. So without further ado, let's get into it. So on Sunday, Venus and Mercury in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces. Venus hits this exact square a few hours before Mercury on Sunday. It's at 29 degrees, which in astrology is known as the anaretic or critical degree, and it's associated with a rash decision after a period of ambivalence. Now, this is a combust Venus, so we have already been caught in this moment where we're blinded by or to the beauty within ourselves or in some area of our lives, depending on where this falls in your chart. So we may be in this situation where we're trying to satiate the ego by forcing a connection to something that's inharmonious, energetically or spiritually, but it feeds our ego or our sense of pride, so it's attractive to us. Then, with Neptune bringing a delusional quality where we're inclined to get lost in a fantasy of something and lose touch with reality, we might mistake some gesture or offering of love or beauty as more genuine than it is, and let our insecurities guide our decisions in this moment. So, for example, one thing coming up is if you've been looking into a cosmetic procedure and researching it for a while and saving up for it, but you come across a Groupon or something similar for some new place where it's like half the price. In a weak moment, you might throw caution to the wind and say, F it, I'm doing it now, without having researched well into the place or checking the credentials or whatever. So be careful. Also, be careful of decisions around dating because you suddenly may feel like taking a risk on that stranger who's been very forward with you with a romantic proposal, but that you've had some feelings of uncertainty or something sketchy about them. But you might be looking for an ego boost, so you might agree, like, sure, you can take me out to dinner. But just be mindful of this Neptunian influence with its effect on Venus and Mercury, and know that it's not a great time for making high-stakes, serious decisions without much thought. And also, maybe best to hold off on discussing topics that require a lot of diplomacy and rational thinking. Instead, it's a great time to explore spiritual or abstract topics, and you may be more receptive to hearing different perspectives or learning about topics you normally might not explore in areas where you most likely won't be encouraged to express a strong opinion one way or another. So this can be a wonderful time to get lost in your creative work and just let your creativity run wild, watch fantasy movies, read fiction novels, and just appreciate abstraction and mind-bending art forms. Maybe play around with AI art if that's something that intrigues you. And if you're in a relationship where trust is no issue, then it's also a nice time to get lost in your own little world and really allow yourself to be romantic and sensual and explore new depths of your love without relying so much on your words to communicate facts about the relationship, but maybe just being in the moment and feeling it and moving through free emotional expression and touch and sharing new experiences together. Now, I also don't believe in preaching fear around aspects and transits. So if you remain aware of the energies happening, then you can leverage the tension of these squares. You could confront certain topics, particularly around Venusian matters, and seek out healing. Whatever you want to do, if you know how to navigate that, then this could lead to some beautiful breakthroughs with Neptune. So on Monday, Venus and Mercury ingress into Cancer. So here you may feel a subtle shift into this healing and protective energy in the moon sign. Now with Venus in Cancer, there is still a tendency to lose all of the senses to love, which can feel great for you depending on your situation. But it's really a nice space for nurturing and building self-love. It's supportive and comforting, and Venus is leaving this playful air sign, which can be a bit flirty and flighty and mischievous in love, to a softer, watery place where love can flow in a more emotional, harmonious, and continuous way. So Mercury is following Venus into Cancer, which gives us a deeper capacity to communicate our feelings. Now, Mercury can also be a bit of a gossip in Cancer, depending on what all is happening. So there may be more of a desire to confide in third parties about relationship issues. But in general, it'll open up a great time for loving conversations around feelings and connecting on an emotional level. So Wednesday is when the Sun squares Neptune. And this can be a great time for meditation and receiving spiritual downloads, but there could be a rather difficult realization involved. So this aspect between the Sun and Neptune is associated with disillusionment. So perhaps what has transpired during the Venus and Mercury squares earlier in the week will become clear at this time. Now, this is not medical advice by any means because I'm no medical professional, but obviously take care of your body. Don't overdo anything that feels good, because that's where you could get into trouble with Neptune. And the Sun represents our vitality. And with the Sun in Gemini, mental health is highlighted and becomes a strong focus during this time when the Sun is meeting the square with Neptune. So breath work, meditation, finding moments of stillness and peace and quiet. If you're feeling overwhelmed, napping, singing, and watching things or talking to people who make you laugh could really feel supportive and help regulate the nervous system. And finally, the full moon in Capricorn comes in on Friday. The Sun moved from Gemini into Cancer on Thursday and hit in opposition with the moon on Friday evening on the East Coast in the US. And this is the aspect that gives us our full moon. Now, the moon is in detriment in Capricorn, so emotions can be harder to access as Capricorn is a cold, Saturn-ruled sign. There is a sense of duty here and the ability to control the emotions, but since Saturn is in Pisces right now, and the moon in Capricorn can speak to a sense of being bound by inherited duties within family or traditional structures, it may bring an awareness to relationships where there is codependency or where one person feels like they have to self-sacrifice to care for the other or feels like the savior of another. And as things about the relationship come to light, if that's relevant right now, and if this is a romantic relationship, maybe some issues around sexual expression within the relationship are also coming to light with Saturn conjunct Priapus. Or not, that could not resonate at all, but there could be an opportunity to address these issues if they are present, because the emotionality is turned down a bit with the moon in Capricorn. Now, this situation could pertain to a family member who needs boundaries enforced on them. But there is this awareness that something has to give so that something new and better can begin. And there is a change coming, and it's inevitable. This change could have to do with some shift in responsibility. But the Sun is in Cancer, so there is still a caring quality beneath all of this. It just might require a sacrifice to be made in a relationship dynamic in order to prioritize your own mental health. So this full moon is giving tough love to me. So these are just more personalized overviews based on the whole sign houses that these aspects are touching, depending on your rising sign. Now, I don't use whole sign houses in my regular practice, but I do for horoscopes because that's how it's done. And for me, they're still helpful and resonate. I typically use Regiomontanus or Placidus. So if you use those as well, or other house systems where you may have more than one sign in a house, then listen to horoscopes for both signs that occupy the house. Also, these are going to play out differently based on the placement of planets in your natal chart. So I'm going to look at where these energies are most likely to be felt, and I'll probably pull tarot around what you should do to ensure you're protecting and maintaining your energy this week. So just look out for another video or shorts around that. So Aries risings. Neptune aspects are happening between your 3rd and 12th houses. Now, with the 3rd house of Gemini, there is a lot of activity here and an emphasis on thinking and communicating within the context of your neighborhood, your relationships with siblings, cousins, and neighbors. Now, the 12th house is the house of self-undoing and hidden enemies and the ways we work to our own detriment. So you may be experiencing a codependent relationship with a person or people like siblings and those I mentioned. And you may have to examine your or someone else's role as an enabler, or topics of addiction or escapist tendencies could be highlighted. Just be aware also of lies and manipulative tactics that may be at play and could be influencing communications and decisions made at the start of the week. The full moon is happening between your 4th and 10th house axis of home and career. So you may be forced to make a choice between those two areas of your life. And it may involve a change in responsibility surrounding your career that also impacts the dynamics of your home and family life. Taurus risings. Neptune aspects are happening between your 2nd and 11th houses. Now, this is your 2nd house of self-worth, values, earning capacity, and your 11th house of organizations, friends, and associates, and the money of your employer, if you have one. Now, with all the Gemini activity in your 2nd house, you may be in a period of thinking a lot about how you show up in relationships in terms of the value you bring, which could be financial, but definitely could have nothing to do with finances, as our value is tied to other aspects of ourselves as well. And just maybe considering how you want to be valued in your relationships or in how you earn your income. So with Neptune aspecting from the 11th house, this could bring up a critical moment or decision regarding your salary, again, the resources of your employer, or your role and contributions to a group of friends or a sorority or fraternity or some kind of organization. Now, this could bring about something you didn't really realize about a hope or an aspiration you had, or you may be presented with an offer that looks really good on the surface but requires some further investigation. So just be mindful of the energies at play here. Now, the full moon is happening on your 3rd and 9th house axis. So you may be called to travel or move a long distance, which leaves some responsibility you've held in the hands of a sibling. Or you may have to let go of a responsibility to your community in order to pursue something that offers long-term financial benefits. And this could also be something like returning to school to get a degree that helps take you to the next level in your career. Gemini risings. The Neptune aspects are happening between your 1st and 10th houses. So you have all this Gemini activity in your 1st house of identity, appearances, mindset, motivations, and immediate environment. And then Neptune is squaring from your 10th house of legacy, public persona, and career. So you may have been in this energy of soul searching and trying to better connect to your environment and relationships with the people in it. You may be in the middle of trying to better align your principles and values to your outer self and how the world sees and perceives you. Now, this could be tied to spiritual and religious beliefs as well, as Jupiter is here in this 1st house. You may find that this new emerging you is no longer in harmony with some public image or title you hold, and you may decide, possibly for spiritual reasons, to cut ties with a career path. You may be attracted to another path that looks appealing on the surface, but you may not have the facts in hand before you need to make a decision. Now, the full moon is happening on your 2nd and 8th house axis, which is most simply tied to your money versus other people's money, but also topics of self-worth and intimacy in the 2nd and 8th houses. So you may have some information about a debt or a tax come to light, or you may be paying off a debt and relieving yourself of that responsibility, or someone may offer you a loan or some money that helps support you during a transitional period. But you also could be examining the ways that that your self-worth comes through in your intimate relationships. So Cancer risings, the Neptune aspects are happening between your 9th and 12th houses. So the Gemini energy is built up in the 12th house, and it could be calling attention to your limiting beliefs and in what ways you keep yourself stuck. This time, in general, may be about looking at memories and events that you tucked away and give them the opportunity to come forward so you can confront them. So you may be actively participating in shadow work, and with Neptune aspecting from the 9th house of travel, higher perspectives, and foreign cultures, you may feel called to go to a retreat somewhere in the forests of Ecuador and do ayahuasca. Now, this is one way that Neptune can really offer assistance and spiritual breakthroughs, as long as you approach it in a responsible manner with the proper support. So the work of uncovering or accessing these buried parts of ourselves is not easy, but it can be very liberating, and you have an opportunity here to make really beautiful progress in this area. Now, the full moon in Capricorn on Friday is happening on your 1st and 7th house axis. The 1st house is about your identity, mindset, motivations, appearance, and the 7th house is about significant one-to-one relationships or partnerships. So you may be called to relieve yourself of some responsibility to another person in honor of your self-care, or this topic may be coming through loud in your life at this time. You may realize that you need to protect yourself, and while you figure out what all that entails and what new version of yourself is likely going to emerge soon, you may have to put up a boundary with someone close to you. Now, as long as you navigate it with honesty and sincerity, it can contribute greatly to your healing process. Now, Leo risings, the Neptune square is happening between your 8th and 11th houses. So all this activated Gemini energy here is in your 11th house. So you may be feeling a lot of energy surrounding your friend groups, associates, organizations you belong to, your goals and ambitions. And Neptune is hitting this from the 8th house of other people's money, such as inheritances or spousal support, or money owed to others via taxes or debts. It's also the house associated with death and experiences surrounding it. So you may be having some very vivid dreams lately, or messages coming in from ancestors that you're using to see into the future or support goals, or you're sharing these in a group that deals with spiritual topics. I'm very tempted to advise you to be wary of cults and being swayed by cult members right now. I was just watching that Twin Flame documentary, and it just really showed how in vulnerable moments we can become easy prey, and you see how people can fall into these traps. Now, the full moon is happening across your 6th and 12th house axis with the moon in the 6th house of Capricorn. So you may become aware of how your short-term health is being impacted by some unhealthy practices or tendencies, or specifically how some annoying ailment you may have been dealing with on the day-to-day may be tied to something bigger that you hadn't considered yet. And now it's an opportunity to address and remedy that. Otherwise, this could just be how you bring some spiritual obligation into your daily reality as a service. And it may be tied to your ancestry or some duty that you're inheriting as someone before you is no longer able to do it. I'm getting something around being a doula or something to do with birth coming from that 12th house in Cancer. But it might not be that. It may be something else. So the full moon is more about endings, but endings bring new beginnings. So that's the sense I'm getting here. But there may be some stress in your daily routine that you are being relinquished from as well. So Virgo risings, for you, the Neptune square is happening between your 7th and 10th houses. So the Gemini energy is happening in your 10th house of public persona, career, and legacy building. So at this time, you may be considering if your career or public role is still in line with your larger ideals and principles and still gives you pleasure and allows you to connect with people in a way that feels authentic for you. The Neptune square is coming from the 7th house of partnerships or significant one-to-one relationships. So if you're considering entering into a business partnership with someone, then be careful about any information that seems too good to be true, and don't rush into a new opportunity solely in order to escape something else. Alternatively, if you have a lot of stress from noise and indecisiveness around your career right now, you may be offered some reprieve by savoring the remaining moments of this deeply romanticized Neptunian period with your partner and having some beautiful connections there. So the full moon is happening on your 5th and 11th house axis, which may have you deciding to pull or redirect some energy from group activities into fun, quality time with a partner or into some solo creative projects. So maybe there's a pregnancy too that you'll learn about with the 5th house, and so much energy here in your partnerships and around romance. So Libra risings, the Neptune square is happening between your 6th and 9th houses. So the Gemini energy is loud here in your 9th house of travel, higher perspectives, study, law, and foreign cultures. So you may have been making some decisions in this area of life and experiencing a lot of activity, such as graduations or traveling abroad, learning a new language. And this may be a time when you have had some involvement in some sort of legal proceedings, like maybe you had jury duty or something. You may have had a new relationship with someone from another culture that's come in. Now, Neptune is squaring from the 6th house of service, stress, and short-term illnesses. So while you may be super busy exploring and traveling, just be careful about indulging too much in any fun behaviors so that you can avoid any negative consequences of that. Now, right now, you may be called to do some volunteer work with people who are in jail or refugee camps or struggling with addictions or victims of human trafficking. Now, the full moon is happening on your 4th and 10th house axis of home and family and roots versus career and public persona. Now, the moon is in your 4th house. So you may have to make some decisions around what's best for your family or what your responsibilities are to them versus a career path you'd like to pursue. So there may be changes in the household dynamics that need to happen and will open up more opportunities for you. Now, Scorpio risings, the Neptune square is happening between your 5th and 8th houses. The Gemini energy is coming from your 8th house of other people's money, such as inheritances or spousal support or money you borrowed or owe via taxes or debts. It's also the house associated with death and experiences surrounding it. So the Neptune square is coming from the 5th house. The 5th house is what I call the fun house. It really is associated with play and doing what feels good and creating just to create and romance and children. So there may be something to do with children and some kind of inheritance here, or child support issues or decisions around pregnancies may come up and need to be addressed this week. So you may have a creative project that you're looking for funding for and need to pay special attention to the details if you're preparing to sign any contracts or make any agreements around it. Just remember, the devil is in the details. Now, the full moon is happening on your 3rd and 9th house axis regarding siblings, cousins, neighbors, mental processes versus the 9th house of higher education, law, travel, higher perspectives, and foreign cultures. Now, the moon is in Capricorn in your 3rd house, so you may be at a time where you're relieving yourself of some responsibilities or obligations around your sibling relationships or in your local community or schools, and or making a change in that area of your life that you may have been thinking about for some time. So for Sagittarius risings, the Neptune square is happening between your 4th and 7th houses. The Gemini energy is in your 7th house of relationships and partnerships. So you may have been busy with a partner, having fun, finding new ways to communicate, or creating things if you have a joint venture with someone. The Neptune square is coming from the 4th house of family, home, and roots. So there may be something coming up between a family member and a partner, or something happening in the home that causes some tension around the relationship. So, for example, if you have kids at home that have been pushing your boundaries or testing the waters by breaking rules that you've set, and you find out during the beginning of the week that a child has been sneaking out of the house in the middle of the night or hiding something serious from you, this revelation may cause you and your spouse to have a difficult conversation or make a difficult decision around discipline, for example. Another example is you may decide to move in with a partner and you need to leave another place, but something could come up at the last minute that you didn't know about, like the landlord is trying to hold your security deposit for some reason. Now, the full moon is happening on your 2nd and 8th house axis, which is most simply tied to your money versus other people's money, but also topics of self-worth and intimacy. So the moon is in the 2nd house. So you may have to give up some money to pay for a debt, which could be tied to your current living situation, if that resonated with you. Or you may finally pay something off that ends up freeing up more of your finances in the long run. So if you're moving in with someone, then this could be the closing of a chapter where your emphasis was on your independent finances, and now you have someone else who you can share that financial burden with. So Capricorn risings, the Neptune square is happening between your 3rd and 6th houses. Now the Gemini energy is coming from the 6th house, which holds stress, service, short-term illnesses, and our sense of duty and routine. So this area of your life may have been coming through a period of change. You may have been placing a lot of emphasis on your health and exercising more or adopting a new diet or researching into those areas. Now, you may have started volunteering or helping someone who needs it. And with Jupiter here, you may have started taking on responsibilities at church or some learning-centered establishment. So Neptune is hitting this aspect from the 3rd house of siblings, cousins, and neighbors, but also mental processes. So you may have had some activity happening around you that has been causing you stress or led to changes in your routine, and you might be escaping into something here, like with a mind-altering substance. So be careful with that and respect your limits if that's true for you. And also remember that it's harder to respect limits with Saturn and Pisces. So the full moon in Capricorn happening on your 1st and 7th house axis involves your identity, mindset, motivations, and appearances. And appearance. And it will be highlighted in a way that might somehow correspond to a partner or someone you're hoping to attract. So you may decide to make changes to your mindset in order to accommodate someone else who you want to come in if you're trying to manifest someone, or for someone who's already in your life. Now, Aquarius rising, the Neptune square is happening between your 2nd and 5th houses. So with the Gemini energy in your 5th house, you may have been dabbling in a lot of different creative projects, having fun with making things and playing around with different forms of art or expressions. You also may have been flirting hardcore with one or more people, chatting late into the night, exchanging voice notes and photos. Or if you have kids, they may have been a bigger focus with lots of end of the year, school activities, graduations, parties, and making decisions around what's next for them potentially. Maybe you learned that you're pregnant during this time. Now with the Neptune square coming from the 2nd house of self-worth, values, and money, there could be a difficult realization around a romance that you've been participating in. Like maybe someone does or says something that gives you pause or leads you to believe that they don't have your best interests at heart or they're misrepresenting themselves. You may question yourself as to why you allowed yourself to get swept away in something unworthy of you. You may just come across someone who has you lost in the sauce and is really seductive, which can be fun if that's all you're looking for. But if it's something that makes you question how authentic you're being in a situation, then you'll want to look closer before diving into it. So if you're talking yourself into it, that's a hint. On the other hand, other people could be putting things in your head about someone, and you might need to just tune into your own intuition and hold off before passing judgment. Now, if you aren't involved with anyone, but you're in a situation where maybe you're trying to make money off of a creative endeavor, be wary of accepting less than what you're worth, or something happening with transactions that seem okay initially, but actually have some issues that could go undetected without proper inspection. Now, with a full moon in Capricorn on your 6th and 12th house axis, with the moon in the 12th house of self-undoing and chronic illnesses, you may realize something about your family health history or something that explains a symptom you've been having that's been causing you some stress day to day, and this allows you to address it. You may also have a revelation around spiritual bypassing or something you've been doing to escape the stress of your day-to-day duties or responsibilities. Pisces risings, the Neptune square is happening between your 1st and 4th houses. So you may have been focused on family matters this past month and doing a lot of family-related activities and thinking and talking a lot about issues that revolve around family, as this Gemini energy is happening in your 4th house. Now, the Neptune square is coming from the 1st house of self, identity, mindset, and motivations. So you may also have been completely sacrificing your sense of self to tend to other people. And you may have deluded yourself into thinking that you had to behave in some way or allow people to convince you of such, creating or participating in codependent relationships with family members. Now, Neptune's been in your 1st house for some time, and this could be something that's, been happening over a very long time. So the full moon is hitting the 5th and 11th house axis with the moon in the 11th house of friends, associates, groups, organizations, and ambitions. So there may be some ending regarding your participation in a group or some responsibility you have within a group that allows you to focus more now on your own hobbies, dating, or children, and other things that are associated with the 5th house.